Hi and welcome to another ink review. My name's Michael and today we're looking at an ink from the Diamine range. It is part of their 150th anniversary series and the ink is Terracotta. Now this ink is a really lovely red-brown sort of shade, as you would expect from the name Terracotta. It's not dissimilar to some of the sienna sort of inks that Diamine have available, probably just a little bit more red or earthy red than those from my experience. As I said, this is part of their 150th anniversary range, and what makes it interesting are these really very cool bottles. Sort of the triangular shape seems nice and unique in its own right, but when you get the full set, the 8 of them make a really nice circle when you put them together, if that's how you would like to store them. I really like Diamine inks. I think that they're really well behaved and really consistent. They work in most pens and they work on most papers without sort of too much trouble. This particular ink costs about $16 a bottle, which I don't think is too bad value really. It's 40 mils. There are cheaper inks. In fact, the larger normal Diamine bottles retail for just less than this, but as I said, this is their sort of premium range, but I think a lot of that pricing is in the bottle, to be honest. They're available through most stores, both sort of brick and mortar shops and also online from the major retailers, and you can get it sort of either on order or sort of in-store from most places. And I think it's a really, really nice ink. I bought this a while back and I've tried it in quite a few pens, from TWSBIs and Safaris through to even some of the cheaper Chinese pens, and it's worked really well in everything, and the shading that this ink can produce is just incredible. So I've done some writing samples, and here it is on Rhodia 80-gram sort of paper. As you can see, the darker reddy brown where the ink pools is really very rich, and then it can lighten out to this sort of softer browny red. Just so we can see it, I've done a sort of a photometography of this ink. Now, what you expect to see after seeing that shading is all here. You get some really lovely lighter pinky orangey red through to some real very vibrant pink and red there, and then the orange and the brown to sort of top it off. And you can see that in all of the shading. It is just beautiful. So I'll talk you through these tests. Most of this was done with a Lamy Safari with a 1.1mm nib, which lays down enough ink to really give us an example of what the colouring and the shading is all about. I also did, just for interest's sake, a couple of lines with a Lamy medium nib and a Lamy extra fine, just so you could see how the ink behaves in smaller nibs. Now with the extra fine, you still get the beautiful terracotta colour, but only a small amount of shading really. Whereas once you get into the wetter nibs, the mediums and of course the 1.1, it's where you really see that shading just popping off the page. It's fabulous. And of course when you put it in a flex nib, you're laying down a lot of ink, so you do get that really rich brown, which was sort of the case also with the swab tests. The single pass, 2 pass, 3 pass, there's not a huge amount of variation, but it is quite a wet ink, so it lays down quite a dark colour the first time and only sort of builds on that. So look, yes, saturation, it's good. It's not the most saturated ink, but with that shading, you do get some really lovely darker, richer tones. Water resistance is low. It's not terrible. You can still make out what was written there, but for the most part, it is sort of disappeared into the paper. And as that would suggest, the cleaning is actually pretty good. It comes out of most pens fairly quickly without sort of too much trouble. Shading is excellent. This ink is, if I had to give this ink an X factor, it is the shading. It doesn't have a lot of sheen. As you can see from sort of this sort of swabbing, it doesn't really pick up much of anything. It's quite a flat color, but in a way that's what makes it nice, because terracotta itself is a matte sort of product in the real world, so this ink does reflect that rather nicely. The flow is good. It is a wet ink, as the dry time suggests. On the Rhodia, it was 25 to 30 seconds, which is quite a long time really in comparison to a lot of inks. Now, the other papers I tried it on, which we'll see about the bleeding and the feathering, included the Tomua River, which if you're going to get any sheen, this is where you get it, and it really just isn't here, where the dry time was 35 to 40 seconds, and it's really well behaved. Of course, where you lay down a bit of ink, of course you're going to get a sort of some coming through, as we do on the Rhodia, but as you can see, it's pretty clean. Nothing's really punched through. Even the flex hasn't even bled through. And amazingly, this carries through even into cheaper papers. Here it is on Reflex 80 GSM copy paper, which is sort of the standard printer paper here in Australia. Dry time, slightly quicker at 20 to 25 seconds. And it is once again really well behaved. There's no feathering. There's virtually no bleed. And it's remarkable, actually. Here it is on the cheapest paper I tried this on. This is Spyrex Notepad. Super flat colour. Not really much shading. There's a tiny bit here and there, but not enough to really make it a highlight. But this paper is so absorbent, and this ink's so wet that it just sort of went down. And it's, once again, only where we laid down quite a lot of ink where it started to pool, only then do we get any bleed through on this paper. So that's a big tick for this Diamine ink. So yes, bleed is excellent. It's virtually none, and particularly on paper that is fountain pen friendly, you're not going to get any, which is really great. So, look, we'll talk about the scoring now. I've given this ink a 4 out of 5. And while it has some really great attributes, there's nothing that really pops with this ink. So I wasn't able to give the X Factor score anything particularly high. It's not like Fire and Ice or Emerald of Chivor, where you get, you know, the glitter or the sheen or something. This has great shading, but a lot of inks have great shading. So I've given that 3. Value and performance, I've both given a 4. You can see the ink just works beautifully and it looks great on the page. This Rhodia is really white paper, and it has amazing contrast. I think it looks absolutely beautiful on this paper. I've written with it on sort of more yellow papers, some of the Leuchtturm or the more yellow Rhodia paper, and it does still look absolutely great. Which is why the colour gets a 5 out of 5. I adore this colour. I think that the terracotta really comes through, and I can't recommend it highly enough. So 4 out of 5, and it is a really sort of good value ink. As I said, in terms of colour, it's similar to some of the sienna colours that Diamine have already in their range, in their sort of standard range. But it's, you know, something that is unique in the fact that it actually looks like terracotta. On the page, it is terracotta. So 4 out of 5, I give this a big thumbs up from my own use. I really enjoy writing with it. I think it looks great on the page. And if it's an ink color that you are interested in, I highly suggest you try out this ink. So, if you liked this video and you found it helpful, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications button if you'd like to keep up to date with the videos that I produce. If you have any questions or any inks or pens you'd like me to look at, please feel free to drop me a message. In the meantime, enjoy your pens, enjoy writing, and I'll see you soon.